I want you to picture something you have saved up for months, maybe longer. You finally order a real Japanese chisel, a hand-forged Nomi with a laminated blade, white oak handle, that beautiful steel hoop at the top. It arrives wrapped in oiled paper. You unwrap it, you hold it, and it feels like nothing you have ever picked up before. And then, because you have used chisels your whole life and you know how a chisel works, you set it on a piece of wood, pick up your mallet, and give it a good solid strike. And in that single moment, before you have made a single cut, you have damaged a tool that cannot be fixed. I know this because I did it. And I am going to walk you through 4 mistakes that will destroy a Japanese chisel in minutes, most of them in seconds, so you never make the ones I made. Plus, stick around to the end because I will show you a sharpening detail for maintaining the hollow back that took me an embarrassingly long time to figure out. Here is why this matters. A quality Japanese chisel is not like anything you have used from the hardware store. It is not even like a good Western bench chisel. It is a fundamentally different tool built on a fundamentally different set of principles, and if you treat it like what you are used to, you will break it. Not dull it. Break it. Permanently. And once you understand why, the correct setup takes about 5 minutes, and your chisel will last you the rest of your life. So let me give you some context, because understanding how these tools are made is exactly what tells you how to ruin them. A traditional Japanese chisel is forged by hand from 2 separate pieces of steel. The body of the blade is a softer, more flexible iron called jigain. The cutting edge is a very thin layer of high-carbon steel called heigan, and it is forge welded onto the front of that softer body. This is laminated construction, and it is the same principle behind a Japanese kitchen knife or a samurai sword. The hard steel holds an incredibly fine edge, sharper than almost anything you can achieve with a typical Western chisel steel. But that hardness comes with a cost. The harder the steel, the more brittle it is. A Western chisel blade is usually hardened to around 58 or 59 on the Rockwell scale. A Japanese chisel can be 63, 64, sometimes even 65. That is extremely hard, hard enough to take an edge that will pare end grain on white oak like butter, but also hard enough to chip, crack, or shatter if you stress it in a way it was not designed for. The handle is typically white oak, or sometimes a dense wood called kashi, which is Japanese evergreen oak. And at the top of that handle is a steel ring called a katsura. That ring is there for one reason, to keep the handle from splitting under repeated mallet blows. But here is the thing. On a new chisel, that ring is not seated. It is sitting up above the wood intentionally. The maker expects you to finish the setup, and this is where the first and fastest mistake happens. Mistake number 1, striking the chisel before setting the hoop. When your new Nomi arrives, that steel katsura is sitting proud above the end grain of the handle, usually by about 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch. It looks like it just needs to be tapped down. So most people, myself included the first time, just put the chisel on a board and start hitting it with a mallet. After all, that is how you use a chisel. But here is what happens. The ring is not seated against the wood, so when you strike the top of the handle, all the force goes directly into the end grain below the ring. The wood has nothing containing it. It either splits right down the length of the handle or the end grain mushrooms out over the top of the ring, deforming the fibers so badly that the ring can never seat properly. Either way, your handle is ruined before you have made a single cut. What you are supposed to do is actually the opposite of what feels intuitive. You take the ring off first. On most new chisels, you can tap it off with a small hammer and a piece of scrap wood. Then you chamfer the end grain of the handle. You are creating a bevel around the top edge of the wood, about 45 degrees, using a file, a rasp, or even a sharp knife. You are removing just enough material so that when you put the ring back on and start striking the chisel, the wood peens over the inside edge of the ring instead of splitting beneath it. The chamfer gives the wood somewhere to go. You tap the ring back into position, and then you use the chisel normally for a few minutes, and the wood mushrooms up and over the ring, locking it permanently in place. That is the designed mechanism. The wood holds the ring contains the wood. But it only works if you prepare that chamfer first. Skip it, and you are looking at a split handle and a trip to find a replacement, if one even exists for your particular chisel. Now, mistake number 2. This one is less common but arguably worse, because the damage is to the blade itself, not just the handle. Some Japanese chisels are not meant to be struck at all, ever, not even once. A tataki nomi is a striking chisel. That is what most people think of when they think of a chisel. But an atsunomi, a thicker paring chisel, or especially an usunomi, which is a thin paring chisel, these are designed to be pushed by hand pressure only. And then there are slick-style chisels, long-bladed wide, designed for controlled paring cuts with your body weight behind them. If you pick up a thin paring nomi and hit it with a mallet, you can crack the lamination. Remember, that cutting edge is a thin layer of extremely hard steel forge-welded to a softer body. The bond between those two metals is strong under normal use, but a sharp impact on a blade that was never designed for impact can fracture right along that weld line. I have seen photos of chisels where the hagane layer simply separated from the jigane after 1 or 2 mallet strikes. The hard steel just popped off. And once that lamination fails, the chisel is done. There is no repairing a delaminated blade. You cannot reforge it in your shop. A $300 chisel becomes a very expensive piece of scrap metal. So before you ever use a Japanese chisel, you need to know what type it is. If you bought it from a reputable dealer, it will be clearly marked or described. If you are not sure, look at the blade thickness. Striking chisels have a noticeably thicker cross-section and a heavier handle. Paring chisels are thinner, lighter, and often longer. When in doubt, do not hit it. By the way, if you are enjoying learning about these ancient methods, I put together something I think you will really appreciate. It is called Kenji's Workshop, and it is a collection of 100 ancient Eastern woodworking secrets for the modern craftsman. Techniques like the ones we are covering today, and a whole lot more. You can grab your copy by scanning the QR code on screen or just use the first link in the description. All right, let us keep going. Mistake number 3, prying or levering with the blade. Now, if you have used Western chisels for any length of time, you have done this. We all have. You chop a mortise, you get down to depth, and you lever the waste out by twisting the blade sideways or rocking it back against the shoulder of the cut. With a Stanley or a Narex or even a nice Lie-Nielsen, you can usually get away with it. Western chisel steel has some flex to it. It can take a little lateral stress without catastrophic failure. A Japanese chisel will not forgive that. That 63 to 65 Rockwell hardness that gives you that incredible edge also means the steel is brittle. It does not flex. It chips. One sideways lever, one twist to pop out a piece of waste, and you will see a tiny half-moon-shaped chip appear right on your cutting edge. Sometimes not even tiny. I have seen chips a 1/16 of an inch deep on chisels that were levered in a mortise exactly once. And here is the part that makes it hurt. You cannot just resharpen through a chip that deep without fundamentally shortening the blade and losing a significant amount of the hagane layer. On a chisel, where that hard steel layer might only be 3/16 of an inch thick at the edge, every chip you grind through is steel you will never get back. The correct technique for removing waste from a mortise with a Japanese chisel is to chop straight down, move the chisel back slightly, chop again, and lift the waste out in small chips. You are working in controlled vertical cuts, never asking the blade to do anything except move straight into the wood and straight back out. It takes a little more patience than the lever and pop method most of us grew up with, but the edge stays perfect, and perfect is what you paid for. Now, mistake number 4. This is the one that breaks my heart, because it usually happens when someone is trying to do the right thing. When you flip a Japanese chisel over and look at the back, the flat side, you will notice something unusual. There is a shallow, hollow ground into the steel. This is called the Urasuki, and it is not a defect. It is one of the most ingenious features of Japanese tool design. That hollow reduces the amount of steel that contacts your sharpening stone when you flatten the back, which means less friction, faster flattening, and a more precise result. It also creates a slight vacuum effect when paring, reducing resistance as the blade moves through the wood. Here is where beginners destroy their chisel. They read that you need to flatten the back of a Japanese chisel before use, which is true, but they treat it like flattening the back of a Western chisel, where you work the entire surface on a coarse stone until it is uniformly flat. With a Western chisel, that is fine. Grind away. The steel is the same all the way through. But with a Japanese chisel, if you grind too aggressively on the back, you will grind right through the Urasuki. You will remove the hollow entirely, and once that hollow is gone, it is gone forever. The chisel will still technically work, but you have lost the mechanical advantage of the design, and worse, you have thinned the Hay-Gain layer at the cutting edge. You have shortened the useful life of the chisel by years, maybe decades. The correct approach is to use a fine stone, at least a 1000 grit, and take only a few light passes on the back. You are not trying to make the entire back flat. You are trying to create a thin, consistent rim of polished steel around the perimeter of the hollow. That rim is your reference surface. It should be maybe 1/32 of an inch wide, just enough to see a clean, reflective border around the edge. If you can see the hollow clearly and the rim is bright and even, stop. You are done. More is not better. More is destruction. Let me share some patterns I have noticed over the years, things I did myself that would have saved me a lot of grief if someone had warned me. The first pattern is treating every chisel the same way out of the box. Most of us have bought chisels that are ready to go or close to it, right out of the package. Maybe a quick hone, and you are cutting. A Japanese chisel is intentionally unfinished. The maker assumes you know the setup process. It is not a flaw in manufacturing. It is the tradition. But if nobody tells you that, you assume something is wrong, and you start forcing things. The second pattern is going straight to a coarse stone. In Western sharpening, we often start at 220 grit, or even coarser, to establish a flat back quickly. With a Japanese chisel, starting that coarse is almost always a mistake. You will remove too much material too fast, especially on the back, where the Urasuki is shallow to begin with. Start at 1000 grit minimum for the back. Save your coarser stones for the bevel side only. The third pattern is using too much force with the mallet right away. Even after you have properly seated the hoop, a new Japanese chisel handle benefits from a break-in period. Start with lighter taps. Let the wood fibers compress and settle around the ring. After a few sessions, the handle will be fully seated and you can strike with normal force. Hammering away full strength on day one, even with the hoop properly set, puts unnecessary stress on a handle that has not yet fully locked together. The fourth pattern is rushing the bevel. The bevel on a Japanese chisel is typically ground to around 30 degrees for a bench chisel, sometimes 25 for a paring chisel. When you hone it the first time, use steady, even pressure and work through your stones progressively. 1,000, 3,000, 6,000, 8,000 if you have it. The hard steel responds beautifully to higher grit stones, and the edge you can achieve at 8,000 grit on white steel Hay-Gain is something you genuinely have to feel to believe. But if you rush it and skip grits or use heavy pressure, you risk rounding the bevel or creating an uneven edge that will take much longer to correct later. So here is the correct 5-minute setup, start to finish. Remove the katsura, chamfer the end grain of the handle at 45 degrees, replace the katsura, and tap it down until it sits just above the chamfered wood. Flatten the back on a 1000 grit stone using light pressure just until you see a thin, bright rim around the Urasuki. Hone the bevel at 30 degrees, working from 1000 through your finest stone. Check the edge against end grain on a piece of scrap. That is it. 5 minutes of patience, and your chisel is ready to perform the way it was designed to for decades. Now for that bonus tip I promised at the beginning. This is about maintaining the Urasuki over the life of the chisel, and it is something I wish I had learned years earlier. Every time you sharpen a Japanese chisel, you remove a tiny amount of steel from the bevel side. Over months and years of sharpening, the cutting edge gradually recedes back toward the body of the blade. As it does, the Urasuki, that hollow on the back, gets shallower and shallower near the edge. Eventually, if you sharpen enough times, the hollow will disappear right at the cutting edge, and your back flattening will require removing much more steel. Traditional Japanese woodworkers solve this by periodically tapping out the back, a process called ura-oshi. You place the bevel side of the chisel on a small steel anvil and tap the back near the edge with a light hammer. This reestablishes the hollow by pushing the steel outward. It sounds terrifying the first time you do it, and honestly, it is nerve-wracking. But with a light touch, 3 or 4 gentle taps just behind the cutting edge, you can deepen the Urasuki just enough to give yourself another year or two of easy back flattening. Start with a chisel you are less attached to. Use a 3 or 4 ounce hammer, tap gently, check constantly. The hollow only needs to be a few thousandths of an inch deep at the edge to do its job. One more thing before I let you go. I spent a long time gathering the best ancient Eastern woodworking methods I have come across, and I put them all into a book called Kenji's Workshop. 100 techniques that most modern woodworkers have never seen, with step-by-step photos and clear explanations you can actually follow in your shop. Scan the QR code on screen right now or grab it from the first link in the description. I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next one.